the concern is that this is a situation creating so many people reacting really badly because of their frustration is now getting out of hand. I am okay, I could handle it, but I'm seeing more and more motorists.
Okay. Sunny?
So I'm concerned. That being said, I think I might need to create a different committee to work with the public works and the city traffic management.
Okay.
About helping out. So because this is not a forum for me, I'm very sorry to.
Your time is up.
Yes.
Your time. Okay. So we're going to move on, but I think we have two people from the Department of Public Works here, and I think we hear you. We're going to move on now to, and thank you for your comments, Sunny. We're going to move on now to agenda item number 4, which is the North-South Greenway update. At our last meeting, we did approve a letter that was sent to the City Council, and also I spoke during that agenda item at City Council and drew attention to the letter. And Patrick Seidler is here today to give us an update on that item. So, Patrick.
Thank you very much, Kate. I appreciate that. Good to see the BPAC and everybody else who's watching. I'm having some slight computer problems, so if I disappear, it's because of the computer problems. Anyway, yeah, there's some good things that have gone on with the Greenway, and so I wanted to bring that information to you. Lauren, can you share the screen, please? Since you have this.
I'm also having computer problems, but we're just gonna hope this works.
All right.
I can't even find a share. Okay. Let's see. Oh, okay. I'll go. Okay, is this right?
Yes, exactly. That's the first slide. So there's a couple different sections of the Greenway that I'll speak toward tonight. What the news really about the North-South Greenway is that SMART was holding its meeting to prepare for a 10-year capitalization project. SMART has an unusual, interesting situation. They have about $60 million cash in the bank account. And so, they're looking at actually maybe even getting some more. And so they decided to budget about $21 million to different projects. And through that process, excitedly, for those who are the bicyclists, they decided to invest approximately $12 million, $13 million into advancing the pathway. And I'll explain how that happened. And 2 of those segments relate to Santerfeld. So those will be what I'm talking about today. The first one is the Santerfeld connection, which we bet out in the field and seen, and which Warren Wells from the MCBC and I reported on previously. And this is just to give you an idea of where the area is. So that segment that's dotted there from the top of Porto Suelo Hill to North San Pedro Road, that we're calling now the Santerfeld connection, was one of the big issues, and that's what I'll be referring to. Next. Or click. There you go. So this, most of us have been in the field, and you kind of see that light green line there is a line that shows approximately where the pathway will go, from the pathway at the top of Porto Suelo Hill connecting to the Greenway at the top, and then down inside the railroad line to North San Pedro Road. And what that does is it basically, with the creek, there's also some building going on in the North-South Greenway over Corte Madera Creek. They've just started that project. And so very soon it's gonna be possible to ride from Mankey Park and Corte Madera all the way up to the top of Porto Suelo Hill on your bicycle with your family, safely riding together with the kids. And those of us that aren't that good at cyclists, right? So it's a really exciting event, moment. And, but we have this issue of this segment that's kind of been receiving short shrift, but there's some really good news. And part of that news is that the BPAC, took action and brought it to the attention of the city council, which I'm going to explain to you why that's so important, which is that Mayor Kate is really the one that made this story happen. She's the one who at the SMART meeting refused to take no, and I'll show you where in the detail. But she, I have to tell you, has just did a tremendous job at the SMART meeting and pushed forward. And now what's going to happen is we're going to get a feasibility study out of the process, which could lead to things like engineering and to environmental clearances and then to building the pathway. Next. So just background, I think everybody knows, we've talked about this before, the Greenway has been around since 1974 in the very first plan that Marin County did. In the 1994 North-South Bikeway, they designed what's kind of the modern route of the North-South Greenway. Next slide. And the San Rafael Civic Center station area plan, as you know, has it in there. And there's a version of the pathway, a description of where it's going to be, and has a slightly different. Man, my battery's getting low. So, you guys, you might lose me next. And so measure, I might lose my power. So anyway, Measure R and Measure Q. Measure R was in 2006, and it did not pass, but it only had 54 miles of the Greenway. And they did some studies, and they found out that with 100 miles of with the entire Greenway done, the people would support it. And so people supported it, and it was passed in 2008. Next. And so this shows you that SMART, is identifying it, that it's describing that the project includes a parallel pathway. And you can see that in the 2008 white paper number 8, that describes a pathway running the entire length of the right-of-way from Cloverdale to Larkspur. Next. And this is Measure Q, though. And Measure Q, if you read that, what it says is they're going to build the pathway the entire length of the system, from Larkspur to Cloverdale, not Measure R, which was only going to build 54 miles. Next. And so this shows you that SMART actually has engineering drawings. That shows you the detail right there on the top of Porto Suelo Hill. And it shows you kind of their engineering drawings showing it go inside that, just like we have in those previous drawings. Next.
You're starting to cut out.
And, excuse me? So this is what SMART's been using to, SMART's been using this to talk about the pathway. And what it is this is what's required Measure R, which is 54 miles of Class 1 pathway and 17 miles of Class 2. So it's a mistake that's happened. I think this is the opportunity that we're having to clear that mistake up. And so this is part of the process that we're reaching toward that. Next. And so again, so what this shows is it's not 54 miles, it's the entire way. Next. And again, this is like on April 7th, 2021, the SMART general manager, he refers to it as a planned 70-mile pathway. So SMART's kind of going back and forth on it. Is it 54 miles? Is it 70 miles? And so next. But then they release a press release saying that they're advancing all the remaining pathway projects to shovel-ready status, which is not what's happening. They've left a couple segments out that include the segment that we're talking about from the top of Porto Suelo Hill to North San Pedro Road. Next. And so this shows the list of all the segments that they're advancing, which is really good news, you guys. I mean, it's very positive. There's $12 million they're going to spend on it, and they're going to get it shovel ready, which means do the environmental work and get the engineering done on the project. And then it'll queue higher for support in the future to be funded. Next slide. But the MCBC and TAM, what they did is they identified that there's 5 segments that were left out of that. And one of them, the second segment, is Port Osuelo Hill to North San Pedro Road. And that's where Mayor Kate comes in. Next. Next. And so what happened is they decided to, Mayor Kate said, hey, wait a second, this is part of Measure Q. This is a part of the whole project. And so what they did was they agreed, because of the mayor's insistence, to do a feasibility study of the entire project. And so they found out that it would only cost $30,000 and the city would contribute half of it, and the SMART would contribute half of it. SMART's already retained a contractor to do it. And it's from a firm in the East Bay called Zune, which is run by Ernest Clock, who's formerly an engineer with the county. And they're going to start pretty soon on the project. But it's very exciting news. And the other section, Lauren, if you go back up to that, the section where the SMART was talking, one more up.
Patrick, it's being suggested that you might want to turn your camera off to conserve your battery a little bit. You could still.
Good. Thank you. Okay. I should have done that before. Anyway, on this one here, if you look down and you look at McGinnis Parkway to Smith Ranch Road, the very first segment, there's a program called the Quick Starts program. And that program is, it looks like smart signaling, and there's some signals coming from the MTC, is signaling that that this segment may get funded through the Quick Starts program. So there's 3 segments of the Greenway and Marin that haven't been completed. Second to Mission, the Santa Fe connection, and this segment, McGinnis Parkway to Smith Ranch Road. So McGinnis Parkway to Smith Ranch Road is already funded for engineering and for environmental clearances. And it looks like they may get the Quick Starts money, which would they'd be able to start building it, which is very exciting, which brings us back to the top of the Santa Fe connection. And on that one there, they're going to begin the feasibility study, and the Santa Fe Department of Public Works will be looking at it very closely, as well as I think the BPAC should, to really keep an eye on it, because if the feasibility study comes back positive, we'll get a price on it and we'll get an alignment, a pretty good alignment on it. And that's exactly what happened down on the Anderson to Second segment, was we got a feasibility study done first, and then got the engineering done, and then got the environmental clearances. So sorry to go so fast. I'm sorry I'm having computer problems, and sorry about the battery, but I want to thank Lauren for being a very good partner and going through the slides quickly with me.
Do any members of the BPAC have any questions for Patrick? Okay.
Yeah, actually, was anything mentioned about how soon, like after the feasibility study is done and stuff, like they would go to the next step, or like how long the feasibility study would even take in the first place, or is it just the funding secured for it?
The funding's in place, but they're working to get the contract put into place. And my sense of it, Tyler, is that it's going to be happening rather quickly. So maybe in the next few months, like let's say over the summer. And there's going to be an opportunity for the BPAC to be involved. There's going to be an opportunity for the city. The city's Department of Public Works is going to be very involved. And so what happens after that then is, the question is, why isn't the Santa Fe included, that segment? Why isn't that included in the segments to get the complete environmental clearances and the complete engineering done? And I think that with the work you guys are doing and with your request to the city council, I think at that time is a time to really lean into that, because there's millions of more dollars coming into SMART from federal and state sources, and they'll have the funding to be able to do that. And so it's going to all come down to political will.
Phil?
Thank you, Patrick.
Hi, Patrick. Thank you for that. You mentioned the 3 critical areas of the bike path going there. Isn't there a fourth proposed area sort of from Smith Ranch Road up to Novato, main gate road? And I
Yes.
was curious what the status of that might be.
You know,
Because I see that as the final connection of making like a true family-friendly bikeway.
yeah, I'll tell you, that's a beautiful stretch of road. And I had rode it years ago on my bike on the railroad, right away on the railroads itself. And the thing is so that'll be in the category that gets the engineering and the environmental work done. And that's also outside the city of San Rafael. So that's why I didn't focus on it. That goes into the unincorporated area of the county. But they're in that same basket of doing the environmental work and getting the engineering work done as well, which really ranks it higher in the competition for funding. And if there's a reauthorization, if there's infrastructure funding coming from Washington, having those things done will really put those segments of the pathway at the front of the line for funding.
Any other comments or questions from the BPAC? Mark?
Patrick, thank you for that. I really appreciate also the historical perspective.
You're hard to hear, Mark.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, that's better. Lean in.
Yeah, thanks for that historical perspective. Really helpful. Simple question for you. I know that SMART's been slow.
Do you have any
Bothered me over the years.
headphones? Okay.
Slow they are in developing the pathway. So what I noticed is that San Rafael is participating $15,000 in this study. Has that always been the plan that the local entities will participate with SMART on this? I always thought it was SMART funded.
So it's really hard, Mark. I apologize to hear your question, but your question is that San Rafael had to put up 50% of the money, and why did they have to put up 50%?
Yes.
I feel the same way you do about it, and frankly, I think that they should be doing the entire environmental study on it, and that would come out with the alternatives. But the allegation is they didn't know if it was actually possible to do. And I think, to be honest with you, what the SMART City Council, because of your participation, and the SMART Department of Public Works, because they work closely with you, they were leaned forward into it. They don't want to let $15,000 stop the entire project. And they thought it was going to be $100,000 to do, and it's turning out to only be $30,000. So like okay, we understand we'd rather not pay it. But the good part is, if we can get the feasibility study done and we can figure the pathway and the routing out, then we have some real more standing, let's say, to be like, hey, we need to be included with the rest of those segments.
Gotcha. Now, are other communities having share also?
I couldn't hear that.
You're breaking up a lot, Mark. Okay.
Are other local entities having to do the same thing? Cost share on some of this? I'm just worried that SMART is going to use this. Say,
Try typing it, Mark.
design.
So you're saying, are you asking us, so are other cities or jurisdictions? So, Novato is nicely organized. Eric Lucan, the vice mayor at Novato, sits on the SMART board of directors with Mayor Kate and Supervisor Conley. And they've done some really good things. I mean, I got to tell you, Novato is the only place where they didn't do they did very few improvements, and they really needed, some investment. So they have some really neat segments that have been, that they're going to be supporting, that'll be really mission critical for the whole idea of the North-South Greenway. And I have to tell you, Bjorn, remember Bjorn from the MCBC? He came up with a brilliant idea of how to make the Greenway work on Roland Boulevard between the Highway 37 bike path and then coming up to Roland Boulevard there. And Novato adopted it. So you're going to see very quickly a nice chunk of the Greenway going in on Roland from, let's say, South Roland to North Roland, where the Taco Bell is. And then he also has a way to get over the Novato Creek. And I don't know if you know this, but there's a pathway on the other side of Novato Creek up there that you can ride up to the downtown station. So Bjorn and the MCBC just did a tremendous job on that. So it's exciting to see. You know, we're not so much in competition, and Sonoma County was lucky enough to get $15 million through the MTC. And so they have a lot more of their greenway being built out than we have in Marin County. But the good news is that the SMART board dedicated approximately $13 million to get that to happen. They've budgeted that in their fiscal plan, in their capital expenditure plan. So it's a real positive.
Okay.
Thank you.
Are there any more, if there are no more BPAC questions or comments, we'll move to the attendees. And it looks like Warren Wells is, has his hand raised. Warren?
Hi, everyone. This is Warren Wells, Policy Planning Director from the Marin County Bicycle Coalition. I just wanted to thank Patrick for presenting this. It's great to hear some updates, a couple things I didn't know. And I also just want to take this moment to thank the BPAC and Lauren for everyone's, for taking the time to hear our presentation about this project and doing the work to write that letter to council. It's really exciting to see this moving along and getting this feasibility study signed off on. So I also just wanted to give one piece of kind of update. Patrick mentioned the McInnes to Smith Ranch Road segment of Smart Pathway. That is going to get recommended for funding by MTC's Programming Allocations Committee. So that's a good piece of news that won't get finalized until a couple weeks, but that's on their agenda for next week. So really excited about that. So that's all I got. Thanks a bunch.
Thank you. Okay, and let's see. Any other, I don't see any other attendees raising their hands. Patrick, did you have any closing comments or asks, or is
what I would say is, thank you, Kate, for giving me the opportunity, and whoever came up with the idea of turning off the video wins the battery award, because I'm actually still around. But I want to echo Warren's comments. Really kudos to the BPAC for getting their recommendation from the meeting to go to the city council. I think that helped Mayor Kate quite a bit, for her to understand the situation and the importance of it. And she just did a tremendous job. And so I think that I see a lot of organization and the political will building around it. I think that we need to keep doing that. And I think that, the next most important step is the feasibility study. So I just really encourage the BPAC to be as involved as they can in it and make sure that we really get a fair feasibility study. Because if San Rafael hadn't have been running the feasibility study from Anderson to Second, the pathway would have never been built. And that's a reflection of the San Rafael Department of Public Works, which is a tremendous job. So we need to keep the San Rafael Department of Public Works and the San Rafael BPAC really involved in this feasibility study. So please continue to do so. And as Warren said, thank all you guys for everything you do. It's great you guys are involved, and you guys are doing well. I mean, in the grand politics of the things, your efforts are paying off. And in a very short period of time, it sounds like from Warren's report on the McGinnis Park to Smith Ranch Road, in a short period of time, you're going to be seeing some really neat improvements in Marin, including the Cordillera Creek overcrossing and being able to get up to McGinnis Park. So congratulations.
Thank you, Patrick. Two things. Yes, Jean just mentioned in the chat, I finally watched the SMART meeting, the tape of the SMART meeting last night, and Mayor Kate did a heroic job in garnering the support of the SMART board on moving this forward. And though it wasn't it isn't going to get the environment, start out at getting an environmental review like many of the other projects along the north-south greenway already have environmental clearance. The feasibility study was a big win. So I will send out, I think it's appropriate that I send out a thank you to her for listening to our letter and thanking her for her leadership and advocacy on behalf of San Rafael and looking at this connection. And Anne, I just wanted to reach out to you because in past meetings, you have suggested that we have an ad hoc committee that follows either segments of the North-South Greenway and how they move forward, or we could either do an ad hoc committee that if we have volunteers from the BPAC that would want to track the different segments that are still left to be done, or we could do one just on the North-South Greenway, just this progress in this segment. But I'm wondering if you wanted to speak to that and if we want to consider doing that at this time.
I think that'd be an excellent idea, and I feel like that would be a great way to have a group follow this feasibility study to find out what's going on. So I definitely think that would be, I think, to start a committee, and then maybe they can determine how much they can take on or which parts they want to take on, because you mentioned about 3 different parts.
Okay. Okay. So why don't we start a committee and if we have volunteers for that, we can have up to 3. So is there anybody that wants to help track this and report out at BPAC meetings on if there's any progress or opportunities for BPAC to weigh in on this and help the city council know what's going on and what we recommend as an advisory committee. Are there any volunteers? Anne? Anybody else? Tyler? Okay, and Phil? Great. We've got our ad hoc. And then you guys can just, if you have nothing to report, you can have nothing to report, but at the end of the meetings, we'll ask you if there's any progress that you want to report out on. And if there is something that is important to present, then you can let Lauren know and we'll put it on it as an agenda item. So thank you for doing that. Okay. Now we're going to move on to item number 5, which is bicycle.
Kate,
Yes.
I think Sunny had a comment in the chat that I think needs to be answered. In fact, if Sunny's there, maybe she could verbalize it.
Okay. I'll read what it says in the chat. It says, is Patrick Seidler an employee or a contractor of SMART or San Rafael's Department of Public Works? To my knowledge, no, he is not. I have a very vivid memory of meeting him on my BPAC meeting when I expressed concern of Lincoln Avenue. So Patrick,
In February 2020, I attended the BPAC meeting and Laura presented the one-way conversion of West Francisco Boulevard. It was presented, and I immediately realized that will create the huge traffic flow of a lot of trucks, and because there's a lot of warehouses and kind of auto shops and stuff, building material, that trucks has to go to the Lincoln Avenue. So now Lincoln Avenue intersection by 2nd Street is a nightmare. I don't know you guys ever driving there at 3 o'clock to 6 o'clock. It's a little dense. So it's cars going northbound on Lincoln onto 3rd, trying to go over to the far left lane, and then the traffic Lincoln going southbound. So it's another story, because I could see that's going to happen. So I expressed their concern of conversion. If you guys realize that that's going to be happening. And I remember Patrick Saylor, he wasn't a committee member, but he was sitting a few seats next to me. And at the end of the meeting, he come up to me and, Sonia, don't worry about it. It's going to be just fine.
Patrick is the executive director of the Transportation Alternatives in Marin, and it's a bicycle advocacy group. So that's the role within which he was presenting today, and what he brings to the BPAC meetings, his perspective. I didn't know if you knew that or not.
I believe Patrick is also still the president of WTB, which is Wilderness Trail Bikes out of Mill Valley.
Okay,
I think that answers her questions.
thank you, Phil. Okay. I think does anybody else have anything about the North-South Greenway update? Okay, if not, we're going to move on to the bicycle and pedestrian safety improvements. So Lauren has a presentation on, well, Lauren and Rafat, I believe, have a presentation on the San Rafael's bicycle and pedestrian initiatives.
Yeah, thank you, Kate. So I'll be presenting. I'm happy to let Rafat chime in whenever he feels like it. But this presentation I put it together. There's a request. We've talked about Vision Zero a couple times, and this is kind of a summary of my response to what we're trying to do and take steps to make San Rafael more walkable, bikeable, accessible. So I'll just jump into the presentation. Sorry, give me just a second. Okay. Woo. Okay. PDF. There we go. Can everyone see my screen?
Yes.
Oh, great. Can I move? There we go. Okay, so I want to first go over some of the rankings that San Rafael has. This is from the Office of Traffic Safety. So it takes similarly sized cities to San Rafael and it ranks them against each other in terms of pedestrian and bicycle or KSI collision, killed or severely injured collisions. So then the rankings to me are a little bit counterintuitive. A low number is not good. You want something closer to 106. So with pedestrian related collisions in 2017, San Rafael was ranked 3 out of 106 similarly sized cities. That means there are only 2 similarly sized cities that had worse collision rates with pedestrians. In 2018, our ranking got a little bit better in that we went down to 14. But similarly with our senior age pedestrians, which I know Kate often mentions, we need more safe routes for seniors, things like that. Our
That's
ranking
because I'm getting there.
Sorry.
That's because I'm getting there.
So our ranking is also towards the top, as well as our ranking for bicycle related collisions. So this is something that I try to keep in mind, when we try to make a change and people aren't happy about it. It's like we have things that we need to improve in San Rafael, and like every little project gets us there. Getting into our own collision database and what we get to use, we were using this really clunky system. I won't say their name because I don't want to be mean, but we moved on to a new system that we're a lot more happy with. I trust the data coming in. The data isn't a year old. I have collision data that's only, it's only a couple months behind, which is really good. And we're able to create maps, tables, graphs, however you take information, this thing can output it that way. So it's really, really nice. If you're a visual person, you can look at San Rafael on a graph. If you like tables, it does that too. When we analyze something, you want a few years of data. You can't just look at one day. You have to look at something, a collision or an intersection or a segment over time. And we use that to identify hotspot collision locations and segments. And that information can help us inform our CIP, our next steps. If you have a lot of rear end collisions on a segment, maybe you look at the traffic signal head visibility and make sure you can see at least 2 signal heads. If you have a lot of broadside or T-bone collisions, maybe you have an issue with like a permitted left turn. Maybe you need to look at protected left turns at an intersection, stuff like that. Getting into how we get to select the data. So this is just a table from when I'm looking at a location or an area. It has all these inputs I get to choose from. I can look at the weather, when we're, or time of day, when are collisions, where are collisions happening at night? Do we have lighting issues? You can look at DUI collisions. And then my favorite feature, which is something we look at a lot, is you can pick what the collision was involved with. So if a car, usually it's a car involved with something, so pedestrian or bike, and that's what we're taking a closer look at. So I searched this area. This is up in Terra Linda, and I drew like an area, and I said, I'm concerned about the bike and pedestrian collisions that happened up in Terra Linda. And then I can filter by, these are all bike and ped, and then I can filter by the severity of the injury. Fatal is red. We have a green, that was a severe injury. And this is it's a nice illustration, and we on the back end can dig into, okay, what was the preceding movement of each thing, and get more into the details to help us figure out if there are trends. So this is how are we trying to be more proactive? Well, how are we using data to make decisions and do projects? So moving on to uncontrolled crossings. This is a really big one, as everyone knows. You have a signalized crossing or an all-way stop where the car, pedestrian, they know a car is going to stop, they cross, or you have a signalized intersection and you have you're crossing with the pedestrian indicator. Uncontrolled crossings are, cars, sometimes drivers zone out or whatever. These are places where you don't have to stop unless there's something there. And so we've put in a lot of effort to enhance all of these uncontrolled crossings in San Rafael. And Kimley Horn did a whole analysis. They recommended, extending red curb and adding signs at every location. And then depending on higher volumes of cars or pedestrians, they would recommend something like a flat rectangular rapid flashing beacon, or something as significant as a hawk, which is what's in front of San Rafael High School because of the high volume of pedestrians crossing at those school hours. And they grouped them into different categories, and it's really based on cost. So the city was able to take care of the basic improvements with our maintenance crews. This is materials we already have on hand. And then you get into stuff that's a little bit more expensive. Flashing beacons can be about $30,000 per installation. And bulb outs can be really expensive, especially with our old streets and the crown of the road and trying to get the curbs to fit with that. And then lastly, a traffic signal is the most expensive. It's, you're building really big foundations, and it's just very costly. So we're chipping away at this list. Like I said, I think we're done with basic improvements. And here's an example of a basic improvement. Before there's a really faded sign. There's parking pretty close to the crosswalk. After we upgraded the sign, we extended the red curb so that if there's a car there, you do still have visibility to the corner where a pedestrian might be. This would be like, this is at 5th and River Oaks. This is more of an enhanced improvement. So I talked about bulb outs. This is something to the right that's more of a bulb out, and there's a path that leads to the elementary school. And this was funded through TAM Safe Pathways, because I'm sure money is always an issue. So we're always seeking grant funding. This worked out for this location because it was money specifically for school routes to school. And this is a crosswalk right next to a school. And then our super special improvements, this is that hawk or pedestrian hybrid beacon at San Rafael High. There's bulb outs, new mast arms, new signals. As you know, that was about a $400,000 project. So and it was funded again by TAM Safe Pathways. So those are all the improvement. People see the improvements once they're done, but what you might not hear about is the outreach process. So when we were doing improvements, like extending something as simple as extending red curb or adding a sign, you think no big deal. As soon as it's in front of your house, it becomes a bigger deal. So before we would even send the work order down to the crews, we send a notification letter, hey, changes are coming. If you want to discuss this, like, please, give me a call. So this is just to say that, these things take time, and it's a lot of like working with residents. People might not be happy about a sign location. It's like, we have standards to meet, but we also want to, make sure the community has been heard. So, and that's just, these changes require communication and compromise. So what's next with our uncontrolled crossings? We are still referencing that 2018 project, and we have more grant funded improvements for crossings coming on Mission Avenue, in the Canal neighborhood, and on Bellum. The Bellum one is actually programmed into our CIP. And then we're going to continue using that list to program more projects into the CIP. As we're always looking for grant funding, I think we do a pretty good job of that. We don't always get the funds, but maybe you've written something really good and you can apply it to the next funding opportunity. So it's always, it's not wasted work. And then the last thing you can do is you can work with developers to possibly tie some of the improvements or public improvements into conditions of approval for a development. So as there's the BioMarin and Whistle Stop going in at the 999 3rd Street, we wanted to make sure that corner of 3rd and Brooks was safe for the future senior housing. So we're looking, how can we work with the developer to maybe contribute to either a signal or a hybrid signal at that location. So it's a lot to watch and keep track of, but we have a plan and we're marching forward with it. This is just an image of, oh, sorry, it's really blurry, but this is the canal. These are where we're doing improvements, which were funded through the Lifeline grant, which is also through TAM. And this is, so the blue circles to the left are Medway, and then there's a circle to the top right that's basically in front of Pickleweed. Okay, so moving on from uncontrolled crossings, getting into video detection. So as everyone knows, we have really old infrastructure, and we are lucky enough to receive about $1 million grant. But with that old infrastructure meant we didn't have detection, and so our system was pre-timed. That means that cars on 2nd and 3rd Street, they were getting 50 seconds, and cars on the north-south streets were getting 40 seconds every single time. Because if you don't have detection, you don't know if someone is waiting on the side street or not. So you have to serve it. So that $1 million that we got through a grant, we were able to add detection everywhere. And we're using that to be able to serve the different approaches faster, or maybe if we can like skip an approach if there's no cars there. We're doing that, and that should, we're hoping it helps progression on 2nd and 3rd Street. And then 4th Street is a little more multimodal, so we're using that detection to get all modes around more efficiently. This is a boring picture of the inside of a cabinet, but I just want to highlight like how much work and funds and coordination it takes to get to the point that we're at. So in order to operate a signal, you normally just need a little controller, but to make it smart and process the detection that we're adding from these little fisheye cameras, you need this smart link, smart sense, this switch. All these things and all these wires, they didn't fit into the little traffic signal cabinets on 4th Street. So we updated all those. That was a new foundation, new cabinet. All these things cost money, take time. That's what we worked on last fall. And now we have a shiny new system. It's really cool. So getting into what the fisheye cameras see is there's little detection boxes that were drawn in for every single intersection downtown. So the yellow is a detection zone, and then the blue is something that's been identified coming through the zone. So you can see the little blue squares are around different types of vehicles. It also identifies pedestrians, as you can see in the bottom left picture. So it's pretty cool what it can pick up. And all that is helping us, you know, improve signal timing, make it more efficient for everyone. So that's that. And then another cool feature of, I'm gonna get through my presentation and then I think I'll take questions, if that's okay. So another cool feature is, what is this? This is pedestrian compliant. So this is the intersection of 4th Street and C Street, which is right in the downtown corridor. And it's showing you all the little dots represents one pedestrian. So this yellow area means that pedestrians were crossing the intersection on the flashing don't walk when the thing starts to count down. That's an okay time to cross. But we also were seeing a lot of pedestrians crossing when they had the solid red hand, which means they shouldn't be crossing then. I think this is a good indication that, you know, pedestrians, they got impatient, they didn't want to wait anymore. They're just going to cross. They proceeded when the coast was clear. And, you know, we want to minimize that. We want people crossing when they're supposed to cross. So a solution that we're looking at is lowering the cycle length for every approach to serve each approach more frequently, basically. So no one gets impatient. And then last, I'm on my last 2 items. So as I said, we are really aggressive with grants, everything from the active transportation program to the highway safety improvement program. We are seeking funding for different projects. Usually it's really important to leverage like disadvantaged communities. So you get a lot of money going into like East Santa Fe. Another good one is active transportation is big into providing improving travel for like the student age population. So those are the different grant opportunities. It can be local money, federal money, and federal money is a little more challenging because there's just more requirements to meet. And then the last thing is simple as maintenance. I work with our maintenance crews. You know, we were trying to add limit lines where there weren't limit lines, and you know, like in the image to the left, the limit line was the crosswalk. So there was an issue of cars stopping in the crosswalk. So we said, let's add a limit line to help with that. And you know, anecdotally, it's helped. Drivers are stopping at the white line instead of at the yellow, so that's good. Updating crosswalks to be more highly visible. So that's what we did with the crosswalk here. We made it a ladder. I'm always working with our crews. You know, if they're driving and they see a sign that's faded or not reflective or not standard anymore, like let me know, let's get it replaced. And vegetation, we love our trees. Trees are beautiful, but trees are, you know, they can block signs and important things that traffic engineers want to keep visible. So working with the crews to, if there's any signs being covered, telling them to go out there and trim that back. And then same thing, just keeping it all trimmed. And here's a good example. So this hedge was totally blocking sight lines. I worked with the property owner. I said it, you know, she was heartbroken. It's beautiful, but I thought it was causing problems. Other people thought it was too. So we worked with her and she chopped it down. I would say visibility is a lot better. So little things like that go a long way. And then lastly is we have a lot of road miles and there's a lot to take care of. I think our crews do a really good job, but if you ever see an issue, please report it. You can write us or call us, and we want to take care of it. So with that, I can open it up for questions.
I have a question, and also, could you go back real quick? I want to take a photo of that slide, actually.
Yeah, Tyler, this is in the agenda packet.
Oh, okay. I guess I'll just copy it out of that. I guess my question is, so you mentioned that we got auto light detection, and you said all lights everywhere. Do you mean literally all the lights now in Santa Fe have that?
The detection, no, it's in central Santa Fe, so about 45 intersections. But that's
okay.
We manage 100, so it's half.
Half. All right. Okay. Thank you.
Lauren, for the collision database, I think that's very cool. Is that all coming from the police, or is any of that self-reported also?
It is coming from the police. I don't think it doesn't include close calls. It's like, yeah, so just police data.
Lauren, I have a concern about West End and traffic down there. When we've had dinner at Whippersnapper, which is by G Street and 4th, the traffic goes by so fast. And I don't know what the city can do to control that, but I feel like as more people are gonna be walking the streets and the hotels going up, that there's gonna be more pedestrians on the road. And I feel like the rest of the controlled intersections are okay, but that West End, the traffic goes fast because they don't have to stop. And I do like what you did with the city on Mission and G, was it the yellow zebra stripings, or the side, the crosswalk stripings are yellow, I think. Yeah, you showed some pictures. That is dynamite. It really stands out. That street was repaved. And I feel like that's a really bright color. And that definitely would also help if you can't put in the more expensive lighting of the site of the crosswalks.
Any other comments from BPAC members or questions? Lauren, I had a couple. In the canalways intersections, the ones that had the blue circles, are those all getting the same treatment, or are those are just places we'll get one of the 3 different types of treatments that you talked about? Or
Yeah, forgive me, I don't remember the project details, but it's some curb ramp improvements where there's no curb ramp. It's some RRFBs, and I think some bulb outs.
Okay.
I'm happy to provide more details on that.
There's some lighting improvements as
And
well.
lighting, thanks.
okay. And in the detection, are those sensitive? The video detection, does that, if there's nobody coming in the north-south direction and there's somebody waiting at a east-west cross street, are those, do those change the lights? Does the video detection connected to, is that a mechanism that changes the light if somebody's waiting for a long time and there's no traffic?
So I can start to answer it. I might need Rafat's help, but it's not set up that way yet. We're still learning the system. There are ways to make it what I'll call snappier. So you can eventually like maybe let it rest in green on 2nd Street. And then if a car approaches from a side street, then it like does the 2nd Street thing, and then it allows the north-south traffic to go. So we're hoping to get to that point, but it's also a little bit complicated because it's such a like consolidated grid that you need to keep coordination on 2nd and 3rd Streets.
Okay. And since Anne brought up an intersection, in Terra Linda, what's been of concern from some of the neighbors is the crossing at Pavadas across Freitas Parkway, because kids walk up sometimes Las Pavadas and go to school. It's kind of it's such a long cross now, and it's kind of scary for parents and kids.
Okay, I can look into that.
And then, are there any other comments or questions by the BPAC? I can't see everybody, but I don't see anybody with raised hands. So, oh, Phil?
Yeah, a continued question. Sort of Anne was mentioning, people driving fast, and we're talking about the intersection in Terra Linda. I happened to see a post on Nextdoor about some neighbors talking about some of the side streets in Sun Valley. And I was wondering what we as BPAC sort of can tell and can say, and what are the traffic calming options that are available to us? So I was just reading this stuff on Nextdoor, and you don't know what's fact or fiction, right? But there are some streets in Sun Valley that do not have sidewalks, and so they're talking about their kids are playing the streets on these side streets, and someone was complaining about trucks driving fast, and just wondering like what we could advocate for traffic calming measures in that situation. Just like Anne, I think it sounded like you were advocating for some sort of traffic calming measure. On 4th Street out by Whippersnapper, and I didn't know what our options were. Sorry about that.
Traffic calming is a tough one. I might let Rafat jump in on this one.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you, Lauren. A wonderful presentation. I was getting overwhelmed in the middle of it. I mean, there's a lot to do. As you can see, the transportation infrastructure is one of the biggest assets that the city owns. And there were millions in the last just couple of years. There were like over 4 to 5 millions in my estimation that went into upgrading, improving, and moving the system forward. We have another almost 14, $15 million going on into 3rd Street that started as a safety project as well. So everything that we do is safety motivated. Traffic calming is one of those tough issues that, you know, we as most of the cities in the country were not able to really put a handle on. It is on a case-by-case study. You know, you know, the whole traffic calming started with a toolbox that came in and added signs and striping and speed display signs, and then undulations and speed bumps, and then let's do marking, let's do narrowing of the streets, let's do neck downs. All of these tools are available to us. It's a matter of priorities and funding. You know, I think the overall solution to this whole thing is something that was started by an elected official in a city that I worked for, is to try to address the cause, try to address the problem at the roots, which is us, all of us. You know, we take our 3-ton car and go 10 miles over the speed limit, and we're not hurting anyone, right? No, we are hurting anyone. 25 miles an hour was established because it is the speed that will make a difference between a fatality if a pedestrian is hit or not. So 26 will kill a pedestrian, in the science says 25. So we need to go back to the basics and educate the public that speed kills. And who does the speeding in most of the residential areas? I worked with police officers for 30 years. After we hear complaints about the speeding, we go out there, we ticket the people who made the complaint in so many cases. So it has to be a balance. You know, with today's cars, we can go 40 miles an hour. We don't even hear the car. We don't even know what kind of velocity and what kind of power that this moving object has. So it needs to start with education in my mind, and not just passing on the buck on to traffic calming. It needs to start with neighbors. You know, now we have neighborhood watch, people texting each other. I think that helps. But in terms of tools and what we have available, we have a graduating system. We start by measuring the speed and measuring the percentage of the speed. And then we start with soft measures. What can we do to clean up the signs, make the 25 more prominent, put 25 miles an hour on the pavement? How about throwing in some stripes? How can we interrupt this fast flow of this residential collector street? And then the next step would be to put in speed display signs. Enforcement is very important. We use enforcement. We collect data, and based on the data, we do saturation enforcement. We say maybe there's a high school nearby and traffic speed gets very high between 2 and 3 in the afternoon. So we work with the police officers. And then we go to the more extreme measures, which is expensive. Every time we narrow down the street, we can narrow down the street and we can put, add more signs. But it gets to the point where we were getting reports of speeding on a less than 20-foot two-way roadway. So you can't narrow the street any more than 20 feet to have functional traffic. And there's limited line of sight, people still speed. So the root problem is people speeding. And that's, that's where I think as a city, we need to start working with the neighbors, with the neighborhood on maybe sending a letter to everyone and say, look, where residents are not comfortable with this speed. No one else lives here. Let's have common courtesy. So we have all of these tools, and I apologize for the long answer.
I brought pedestrian, the Vision Zero up because I'm interested in, as the transit center gets relocated, Whistle Stop gets built, and there's more seniors walking around downtown. And we're encouraging people as a way of bringing down greenhouse gas emissions and lowering vehicle miles traveled, et cetera, to bicycle and walk and use transit. And if we don't have a safe network and safe intersections, especially in those highly traveled areas, we can advocate all we want, but people are going to get in their cars. And I think so. We're going to move on to after we get public input, but onto our work plan. But I mean, I have found over the last 10 years that I've been a part of BPAC that we've worked really hard at improving the connectivity of the bicycle network, the bike path network. But I think that there's opportunity in this committee to focus on if there's, looking at how some of the growth that San Rafael is planning for, how we could be proactively looking at how we could improve safety in areas where there might be growth or in areas that are already experiencing some pedestrian collisions or by both bicycle and pedestrian collisions. So I appreciate your remarks, Rafat, about speed and engineered solutions versus personal behavioral change. And also there's some opportunity maybe to do some, maybe if the city council meetings, it was talked about it, everybody in San Rafael, 25 miles an hour, if you stuck to the speed limit, that would make a difference. I don't know how many people watch city council meetings, but maybe some kind of public education campaign. So I think if there's no more, Kevin, did you have a comment?
Kevin?
You're muted, Kevin.
Kevin, we still can't hear you. You're going to have to start over.
You have the mute on.
I was just praising the public works staff, the great work that they've done. It's great to hear this, but I'm wondering if many people in the city know what's going on, know what you're doing, know that you're doing all these things. I think it'd be great if there was a way to get that message out. And my other comment was, you talked about education, and I think that's a very important thing. Are there like pilot programs that other cities have used that maybe you could help work with certain neighborhoods in the city as kind of a test program, see how it works there, and then in the hopes that it could be expanded to other neighborhoods?
Thank you for the comment, Kevin. And we are continually trying everything that's possible. Caitlin Street, we're looking at opportunities for traffic circles. We're trying everything we can. And I totally agree with you and the rest of the committee. We really need to get out. We need to get the message out, and we need to use the virtual space to do some more educational programs. Actually, Lauren applied for a grant from the Office of Traffic Safety, and the plan had an educational component to it, but unfortunately, we didn't get the money. So we have that on our radar. And what we really need to have is all of you, all of the eyes and ears and the expertise and the perspectives that you bring to the table, because we have a major challenge. I mean, when when we have a challenge of taking city from second place of being second worst, top second to, I don't know how to say it, but very bad, to a city that I wanted to make it we want to make it a model city. And that's what Kate is bringing, is the Vision Zero. And Vision Zero is a ladder. You can't jump in one leap, get to the top of the ladder. We have to take programmatic policy, education. We need to tap every resource to make sure that we are making way to Vision Zero. Because the whole mentality of crashes, they're not accidents. I mean, we changed that whole language 10 years ago, maybe 15. We don't call it accidents anymore because it's preventable, and it's a crash that we could prevent it. And so there is that goal of zero vision for the 530 some crashes that we have in the city. There is a vision where we can reduce it to zero. How can we get there? It takes a holistic approach, and we need all of you. Kate?
Phil, sorry, I was muted.
Hi, Rafat. Thank you for all of that. I would like to sort of push back together. Not that I disagree with any of your points at all. And I absolutely think, having neighbors and sort of people driving the speed limit is definitely a good thing to do. And a public outreach campaign can help slow down cars, but so can speed bumps. That could also do that and sort of enforce it on those roads. And so, and certainly, narrowing roads, what you do, and people still speed. And so, for some of these roads, I think what we're seeing is like, these are constant problems that aren't solved. And you say, we go there and we ticket the neighbors, and like, yeah, that's right. So you're educating the neighbors and you ticket the neighbors, but what could really slow them down is some sort of infrastructure improvement. Yeah. And so, that's the other half of it. And that's what I feel like is more in BPAC's control to advocate for, right? It's hard for us to advocate like full societal change in how we operate and use cars, but we can advocate for like, hey, on this little side street, it would be nice to have whatever traffic calming measure we think of, like a speed bump.
I would like to respond to that real quick about a speed bump. And I don't want to make it a traffic calming session here, but as a young engineer, I once in my career, I jumped into speed bumps, and I was the biggest advocate of speed bumps, undulations in neighborhood. And then I found out that we're leaving traffic engineering, we get into social engineering. Property values go down on streets that have speed bumps. That is a scary thought. A speed bump is a big waving flag that there's a problem in this neighborhood. Do not raise your kids here. I was on a project many years ago where we went marching, we went speed bumps, we went and changed the policy to the city council and all of that, neighborhood groups. And that when the speed bump landed into the main advocate of that, by design, it landed in front of their house. They went against the whole project, and they were fighting the project. So speed bumps have effect on talking about our community response time for fire engines, for the paramedic to get to somewhere. When you envision a city that has 2 or 3 speed bumps on every street, you're talking about 2 seconds of delay every time a fire truck is hitting, and that could make the difference between life and death. There are some ADA issues, American for Disability Act issues. There are speed bumps that will shift the driver, and a disabled driver, they can drive vehicles. If they hit it at a certain speed, it can lift off the wheelchair, or however they're fixed to behind the steering wheel. There are some major challenges against them, and I can't think of anyone that could still legally, without exposing the agency for major liability, would put speed bumps. So, I mean, we would love to have a simple solution. If you can come up with one, I am with you 100%. But we need, you know, we need to work out all of these kinks from those solutions, and it needs to, and that's why I mentioned earlier, it is a case by case basis. It is, you know, it is a context sensitive solution as to what the neighbors will actually tolerate. Um, and
So,
I had to throw that in.
uh,
That was a great response. Thank you.
Thank you.
Barry, did you have a comment? You're on mute. Okay.
Yeah, just I guess a question for for Rafat and for Lauren. I mean, given that there's so many pedestrian improvements in the works right now, is the city collecting any data to do kind of a before and after? I mean, to look at whether speeds are impacted or pedestrian yielding rates or just anything that might be able to demonstrate, well, this kind of thing is effective in the situation. So that also might be valuable in trying to get future grant funding if you have some kind of data that shows that something works.
We don't have a major data collection, but it's a great idea, Barry. I think that's a great idea. I mean, aside from Lauren's before and after slides that showed the physical improvements, we should be able to collect data. And I wanted to add one more thing about the detection, Kate. You alluded to the detection. Among the many things that we detect are bicyclists. We never had bicycle detection downtown. Now every bicycle in the downtown is detected, and that detection goes to the controller and says there's a demand at this approach. Okay. So even if the bicyclist is the only one in the approach lane, the demand is put to the signal. They don't need to get off their bike and push the button or wait for a car to come in or look for the loop to find, you know, what the best spot to put the bike on. So now they are detected, and that's a great advantage.
That's great. Okay, I just wanted to bring up Lori's comment in the chat. She was saying there used to be a portal on San Rafael's website for the Public Works Department where you could communicate if there was a street or an intersection or something that you had concerns about. Is that still, is there somebody that's monitoring it's still there, but I'm wondering if anybody's monitoring. Is there a way for the public to communicate? What's the best way? Just a phone call?
There are so many ways to get a hold of Public Works. I can speak for Public Works. I'm sure the city has similar resources everywhere. There is CP Connect. It is on our website. Anyone can type in and say, I don't like the light and how it operates at this location. Boom, it goes, it gets assigned, it gets addressed. What Lori, Lori and I go a long way now, 2.5 years, almost 3. And when I first started, she kept asking for that portal where, you know, she wants to be notified of anything that goes on.
I see.
Now, all of the memos, the communication that we sent to the city council to update them, you know, about development progress, about, you know, programs, about, you know, how we're doing downtown signal timing, all of that information is posted on the web, and people can sign up to receive emails. And that I work with Talia in our office, in our administration. That portal is available, and I can get back with Lori and show her how to get on it. But I think that, you know, this is the kind of, you know, we need your feedback. Lori made a great feedback, and we're sharing almost on a daily basis everything that we do.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
And Lauren, let's move to the public comment. Warren has had his hand raised for a long time. Warren, did you want to say something?
Yeah, I just wanted to just respond to a couple of comments made by Rafat. So, you know, I do wonder, you know, whether, like, what should be the balance in the Public Works Department has in like maintaining property values versus making the city safer. I understand the politics of these improvements can't be ignored, but I do urge the BPAC and the Public Works Department to advocate for the improvements that will save lives and to sell those improvements to the public rather than merely considering which ones might be most popular. I say this in context of yet another senior pedestrian out shopping for groceries being killed on 4th Street 2 weeks ago. That I don't think we should be ignoring that, and like Lauren showed, that the dozens of other people who've been killed walking in our city in the last decade. And so there are places around the world that have raised crosswalks and speed bumps and where people in wheelchairs can get around, and the buildings aren't catching fire. And so I just want us to think about what works in other places and not constrain ourselves to the politically popular improvements. So thank you. But again, that all being said, I do want to make clear that I really do appreciate all the hard work the Public Works Department is doing, and I don't want that to go unnoticed.
Thank you, Warren. Sunny, did you have a comment on this item?
Yes, thank you. Thank you for the presentation. I want to point it out a couple of things. I mean, it's in my back of my head. I took some photos of the bulb outs in front of the Santa Fe Safety Center, both at the 5th and D Street. And it was one of the 3 poles that they placed it on the corner of the fire station was knocked over, and there are just streaks of tire marks over there. So it's clearly cars running over and over, even after almost a year being bulb outs there. And I have also seen police officer turning right turn from the D to 5th Avenue, going far over around, try not to hit that bulb out, going over the opposite direction of the double yellow line on the 5th Avenue to get to there, twice looking west towards east on 5th Avenue. So that happened twice. So I know that police officers cannot turn safely without hitting the curves, a right turn from D to 5th Avenue. That said something. Luckily, there was no cars at the stop sign on the opposite direction on 5th Avenue going west from east. So I'm just wondering why there's no reason you guys not to paint that bright red on that bulb out. Because I saw Lauren showing the presentation of some of the around the curves, brightly red colored. Why that particular curve is not colored, painted with red? That's what I'm gonna suggest it to do the next, if it's possible. And one more thing is you talked about the 3rd Street and 4th, the 4th Street and C, that how many people is crossing a certain time of the day, I'm sorry, because I have to explain this. Otherwise, I have to.
Okay, and then we have to move on because we have a half hour to cover another agenda item. So you get 2 minutes, and we got to kind of stick to that. Sorry, Sunny. Thank you. And looks like Jean has her hand raised. Jean.
Hi, thank you. Just brilliant work that the City of Santa Fe staff is doing. Thank you so much. And I also agree with Warren and Phil that we need to press for prioritizing safety. And I don't know if Santa Fe has adopted Vision Zero. I think that didn't happen a couple of years ago. So maybe that's something the BPAC could advocate for, the city actually adopting Vision Zero. And then I have a very specific question. Lauren, in that wonderful video detection, new stuff that you're just starting to initiate, will that be looking at the corner of where West Tamalpais crosses 5th next to the smart tracks? Because that's the light that I'm most frustrated with, because it never recognizes me as a bike trying to go north and south on Tamalpais. And will that be part of your program?
Yeah, I can look into that, Jean.
Thank you.
Great. Okay. I think we should move on because some of these comments might also come up in the next agenda item. So I'm going to start with the BPAC work plan. And Lauren, do you have a share screen for this? So part of our charter, in our charter, one thing that BPAC is committed to do, here's our charter, It says that in the blue highlight, BPAC will establish an annual work plan that advances walking and biking in the city and will report annually to the city council on its recommendations and pending work. So it's not only for the report, but sort of to guide our meetings going forward. We do get reported to on projects that are in different phases of planning and design, funding, et cetera. But also in terms of moving forward, I have been working with Kevin, who will be chair next year, on how we can advance the things in our bicycle pedestrian master plan as priorities, and track that and use that kind of as a foundation for our reports to city council every year, but also to see where we've been and how we've progressed. So at the beginning of I don't know if you guys had a chance to look at it, but part of the process on page 4 is our goals, the goals of our bicycle and pedestrian update that we did in 2018. We went through a prioritization exercise with Alta, and the goals turned out to be, the first goal was safety, identifying and prioritizing safety improvements. The second goal was connectivity, which developed networks that connect residents and visitors to major activity and shopping centers and schools, and to work to close gaps between facilities. And then the third goal was coordination, build ongoing planning efforts to identify changing needs at the local and the regional levels, including things like complete streets, working with planning efforts that are also coordinated with environmental improvements and transit projects, as well as improving the coordination between the San Rafael City with other jurisdictions. The fourth goal was universal design standards, supporting facilities for all ages and abilities. And the fifth is programs, which is providing educational encouragement programs. And one of those might be, slow down and go the speed limit at 25. So I thought in terms of developing a work plan this year, we thought it might be nice to get a work plan going and have it overlap to next year's chair. So we'll work on it this year and then we'll continue that. And then next year we'll look at our work plan and what we've accomplished, and then what are our priorities for the future years, as a way of establishing a framework for some of our meetings. So Lauren, I wanted to go first to, the first page on tracking progress right there. It just says tracking progress towards the plan's goals is crucial to the overall plan success. While the goals define broad desired outcomes, tactics, and objectives, while the goals define broad desired outcomes, tactics and objectives help define a preferred approach and the measurable steps needed to achieve them. And so if each page has pretty much one goal, the strategies or tactics on how to to achieve that goal. And then it has some objectives for the 2 years following. This was approved in 2018. And so thought we could look at 2020 and 2020. 2020 is what we were trying to achieve under this plan as objectives for 2020. And then look where we would ideally want to be in 2022. And I wanted to start with the goal, with the goal of safety. So prioritizing safety improvements in the city and looking at the 5 strategies that we have listed under safety, and how what our objectives were to achieve those strategies. One was, and so actually let me just say that the idea of doing this is for you to weigh in on when we get through just a quick review of this, is just giving feedback on what you think that might be worth a couple of things that would be worthwhile for BPAC to prioritize and focus on in our agendas going forward for the next 6 months or so. And moving forward into next year. So the first goal is safety. We've talked a lot about safety and collisions already today. There is some data also in our master plan of collision data also. So the first is reducing both bicycle and pedestrian involved collisions, and most importantly, eliminating severe injuries and fatalities, and looking at where those are occurring and how we might improve those. The objectives under that are adopt a Vision Zero policy. Do we want to have somebody who's from a town who adopted a Vision Zero policy that's achieved some level of success or has some lessons learned to come and present maybe at a BPAC meeting? Or do we want to look at a Vision Zero framework and how we might include what San Rafael is already doing and look at how that Jean, I think you need to mute.
Oh, sorry.
That's okay.
Sorry, I wasn't muted somehow, and I don't know how to mute. Oh,
Okay.
got it.
Oh, you almost, there you go. So by 2020, our objective was to adopt a Vision Zero policy of eliminating severe injuries and fatalities and establishing a baseline for comparison. Maybe we could do that at key intersections downtown. Maybe we could do that in, on Bellum and Kerner. I don't know, but we could talk about that. And then looking forward, we want to reduce overall bicycle and pedestrian involved collisions by 10% from that baseline. The second one is to identify locations with potential safety concerns and identify proven safety countermeasures that might address those concerns. And then the objective is to integrate findings from Marin County's systemic safety study, which I'm not familiar with that. The third is update citywide e-bike and electronic assist bicycle policy, and review best practices maybe and recommend changes to citywide parking policy. And that might be productive in view of the fact that we're going to have a bike share program starting up. And then number 4 is develop curbside management policy, not trying to achieve something by 2020, but going forward, curbside management policy, when you have a general plan update where there's a lot of competing needs in some of our streets like 4th Street and Fifth Avenue, looking at BPAC might want to look at curbside management policy, looking at best practices and recommending at some future date, preparing for that. And the last one is to update citywide safety policies, review a citywide distracted driving policy as an objective, reviewing best practices and maybe recommend some changes to the citywide policy, and looking at sidewalk bicycling policy going forward and recommend changes to that. The next goal is under coordination. Again, we could look at that goal. I mean, sorry, not coordination, under connectivity as our second goal. So, and I think that we've done some pretty good work on this over the last few years. Implement proposed bicycle and pathway network, complete 5% of the proposed major routes, including interim connections to the Richmond San Rafael Bridge. And some of the people that are on this in this meeting and participating in the public have had major contributions to that. And by 2022, we want to complete 15% of proposed major routes and complete 5% of proposed secondary projects. And a lot of those are identified in our plan, those proposed projects. Number 2, implement proposed crossing, lighting, traffic calming, and pedestrian projects. A lot of those are we hear from through DPW, but there may be other projects that BPAC may want to suggest and track going forward. And then conducting project feasibility studies, which is exactly what the North-South Greenway feasibility study is. That was a letter that we as an advisory committee heard a presentation. We wrote a letter to the city council and advised them to use this opportunity when SMART has funds to look at this connector of the North-South Greenway, and some progress has been made. So that's another thing. Looking at demonstration and pilot projects. We did one on I think it was West Tamalpais Avenue one time, but how can we do that? And then these others, implement proposed bicycle parking. We've done a pretty good job on that. Look at the citywide parking policy and implement and maintain bicycle and pedestrian wayfinding. The third goal is coordination, and there's some under there. And then the last two in our universal design and programs. So basically, hopefully you've had a chance to look at this, but I just was wanting to find out from each of the BPAC members if you had some ideas of what you would like to be included in a work plan for BPAC in the next 6 months to a year, something that we can have as a continuing thread that we're trying to advance as an advisory committee and for the city of San Rafael that we can make progress on. And anybody who wants to start, Tyler, did you want to start? And we can.
Yeah. I actually want to come in, and I'm not sure whether or not it's a bit of a gray area, but San Rafael is a bit of I'd say a good portion of the biking community in San Rafael mountain bikes as well. And we have a fair amount of trails, both San Rafael and county, under both jurisdiction within San Rafael. And I've really noticed a lack of maintenance and care. And some of them just getting straight up abandoned due to that and stuff. And I mean, if we could just somehow remind the city that we have the stuff and it's there and to maintain it, I guess. I don't know if that makes sense really, but yeah.
Great, good comment. Phil, do you have any ideas?
Yeah, Tyler, I'm quite involved in the mountain bike community, and there are a number of organizations that do that. I don't actually see that sort of as part of BPAC's purview, is dealing with the different land management organizations. But perhaps connecting with Warren or someone at MCBC could get you more involved in that too. But there are a number of mountain bike specific advocacy organizations working on our trail systems.
Did you have anything, Phil, that you think that the BPAC should?
Yeah, I thought it was great to review this as I was going through it, and in lots of the ways, in lots of these sections, we're way ahead of schedule, and in some of the sections, we're sort of behind schedule. Mm-hmm. And so I think, I don't know if now, on the spot is the time to do it, but if we went through and someone could help identify the things that we really want to work on, like low-hanging fruit is the very first thing that Jean mentioned, was adopting Vision Zero, and we recommend to do that in 2020. And sort of, the steps to adopting Vision Zero, I am not an expert on this and would happy to get expert help, but I believe you just have to get the mayor to sign on. And that would be our first step. And the ways we would do that is sort of writing another letter. But I think approaching it like line by line and seeing the ones that we're really falling behind on or need to work on would be the way to do that. And I think that is a low-hanging fruit place to start. So
great.
My daughter's walking in, I'm going to mute.
Okay. Kevin, did you want to weigh in?
Yeah, I agree with Phil. I think the first step we ought to take is let's go through the 2020 and 2022 and see which things we've accomplished or are heading or going down the road to accomplish. And then that would be the starting point. And then after that, I think we can figure out what areas we need to focus on, the ones that we're deficient in. I'm still a little concerned that and this is, that this, I think the report is heavily weighed towards the bicyclists as opposed to pedestrians, but I still think we need to follow the plan. There's a lot of pedestrian things in here. It's just that there's more bicycle stuff. But I'd like to just maybe work with city staff and see the areas where we're deficient, and then maybe focus on that. And once we find out which areas we're deficient in, then we can focus, maybe suggest specific projects.
Great. Anne?
I definitely agree with what's been said by everybody. And I also want to thank Lauren for that excellent presentation and the education on what you're doing to help the pedestrians and the traffic flow. But I definitely agree with Kevin too, that we should focus a little bit more on pedestrians. I feel like we've done a great job with cyclists. I'm a cyclist, but I feel like we should at least divide our time between the cycling community and the pedestrians. So I feel like that's going to be a big problem downtown San Rafael with the new, seniors housing going up, like I said, the hotel. We just need to address that before it becomes a problem, be more proactive about it. So that's where I feel like we should put some of our energy in the next year.
Great. Barry, did you have any ideas that you wanted to share?
Sure. I mean, I guess part of what I'd be interested in hearing is from staff about if there are certain things on the list of priorities that are included in their work plan coming up, because there may be things that we can do to support things that are already identified and in the budget. But I mean, also, I just think there's a way to kind of break down things that we want to look at. Some of it may be advocating for specific capital improvements. We've talked a bit about education, but I see one of the things on here is looking at the city's parking policy, and that would be something that we could provide some ideas on. That's not just constrained by, we don't have any money. So I mean, I think there are things that we can do that that we don't necessarily have to worry about, we're waiting until funding comes along, and maybe we can take a look and identify some of those kinds of things.
Great. Mark, do you have anything to share?
Can you hear me?
Barely.
Sorry. I agree with Phil. I personally think it's safe.
Mark, the audio is not coming through, at least from my end.
You're going to have to type into chat.
Type it in.
Yeah, sorry
Thank
about that. You need headphones to plug in, just like mine. Sorry about that, because I type something into chat, because we would like to get your input if you can. Okay, is there any other, Lauren or Rafat, did you have any advice on us moving forward with a work plan or a process that you would recommend? I was thinking, I think might have talked about having an ad hoc committee organizing some of the ideas, looking through the, it's a possibility, and bringing us a focused place to start a conversation about a work plan maybe the next time. The only regret that I have is that our next meeting is in August, and the year's almost over. We're moving pretty quickly, and so so I was thinking that between now and August, if there were some people that wanted to just kind of go through the tracking progress or the plan and make some suggestions, we could do it that way, or we could just sort of have a longer conversation the next meeting.
Kate, you asked if staff has any recommendations. I think my take on all of this, it's involved and it needs to be focused if we want to get anywhere.
Yeah.
So maybe we can help in a way that we can take the 2020 blocks and put it in a Google document and have people work on it online and put their comments and update. And maybe that would be the draft plan that would be discussed in August. The other option here, I mean, your observation of the year's over, and when we get to August, we have four, two more opportunities to finish this plan. And there needs to be some coordination, some calibration, and all of that. So maybe suggest having a Google document, have people comment on it, and suggest a meeting in July to get a head start. We can always add meetings. It could be the whole group, or it could be a smaller group where you can, maybe the task would be to come up with a draft plan. And then, and that the draft plan will be the working document for the next meeting that could either happen in either July or August. So these are my comments and suggestions.
Great.
Hey, Kate, can I suggest that, I think timing's an issue here. Instead of trying to come up with a plan in the next 6 months, could we come up with like it's basically a 1.5 year plan? I mean, a plan that we would take through the end of next calendar year?
We can, we're going to report out to City Council on, what we've worked on over the year, regardless of how we work, whether we've had a work plan or not. But I just thought it would, if our priority is safety, we have a lot of development going up, and many of us are concerned about the pedestrian safety in particular, and pedestrian, safe routes to transit, safe routes for seniors, et cetera, safe routes to school. Looking at that from the perspective of, it just might be a little more cohesive way of looking at how the city is working on different projects and how they fit in a network, a coordinated network of pedestrian pathways. Or so I was kind of hoping that that a few people would volunteer and maybe move us forward to the next meeting, either in putting together a draft work plan, or saying we've narrowed it down to these 5 topics or these 3 topics, and this is how we could, these are some of the strategies or the tactics that we might want to focus on. Phil, you had a question or a comment?
Sort of a suggestion that maybe people would or would not agree with. I did like Rafat's idea of getting a Google Doc that we could comment on to start narrowing these down. And I think that would be a good way to sort of start getting our long range plan. In terms of you talking about, we want some action item to get forward, I would sort of maybe recommend, to me with safety, like when I'm just looking through this, Vision Zero is what just stood out to me.
Yeah.
So something, if we want to try to move forward for next meeting, is if we could perhaps have a committee that wants to work on a Vision Zero. And so for the next meeting, they could investigate Vision Zero, what it would take, and perhaps a draft of the letter that we could send out and then send to the city council and the mayor to get the mayor on board. And so then we're making progress in the short term for next week, and we could continue planning out our longer terms, and sort of like every meeting we choose our new, big goal that we hit towards. And if people like that idea, I think, so I'm recommending 2 things. One is to get a Google Doc that is sent out to us that all people can comment on of all these things, so we could get our priorities. And then 2 is to sort of rapidly go after the Vision Zero idea.
Okay. I for one am really in support of the Vision Zero. I do think it would be good to, if you have a Vision Zero policy, are there any are there any, what are the pros and cons? What are the constraints that if a city has a Vision Zero policy? Are there any negatives to having a Vision Zero policy as opposed to implementing safety improvements
Yeah.
in
So
another way? So I just,
it was looking like I see some head nods from the committee as I was going through. Is that correct? So perhaps if we could have a committee that could then investigate, if we have another one of our ad hoc committees that could investigate all those issues and sort of present their findings to us, maybe with an action plan. If the committee then decides that, yes, we want to go forward with it and we need to do these 3 things, they could present that to us at the next meeting.
okay. Is there anybody that wants to work on a Vision Zero from the BPAC committee? Would you be willing to work on a Vision Zero? So I see Kevin. I'm willing to work on that. Is anybody else willing to spend some time just moving us forward on a Vision Zero?
I see Barry too. And that's
okay.
3. I'm happy to have those 3.
Okay. Okay, great. Okay, and then Rafat or Lauren, would you be willing to provide a framework for us to look at the progress, tracking progress as a way for us to develop any other work plan that we would like to have, and also how it's relevant to what you're working, how it's relevant to DPW. We're really we're only looking at, kind of taking Sunny's comments to heart. We are tasked with looking at bicycle and pedestrian infrastructure. We don't really spend a lot of time on how the infrastructure serves other needs and overlaps and conflicts with or support. So we can't operate in a vacuum because it has impacts, but I think it's important to hear that. I also think that all of these are in safety, and Vision Zero is also and whether it's infrastructure improvements or whether it's public education policies or other policies in terms of more enforcement. I think that in terms of a work plan and in terms of going forward, I think we're hearing that we need to advance make progress on our goals, and at the same time recognize that the infrastructure that we are making comments on or advising on is serving a lot other purposes, and how we impact each of those, whether it's how bicycling impacts pedestrians sometimes, and where they support each other and where there's conflict. I just wanted to make that general comment because I do think that we want to acknowledge what we're hearing in these meetings, people who are trying to find a way to publicly participate in things that they think are having impacts on their mobility and getting around. It's not, and so that being said, I think what we've accomplished today is we have the takeaways are we have 2 ad hoc committees, one that's going to start to actively track our progress on completing segments of the North-South Greenway, including the one has the feasibility study going forward and is going to report back to BPAC. We have a Vision Zero ad hoc committee that will investigate and bring forward some information and possibly a recommendation to BPAC going forward. And then if I don't know exactly how this is going to work, but hopefully Rafat and Lauren, you'll be able to talk about producing a Google Doc where we can look at our tracking progress portion of our bicycle pedestrian master plan 2018 update and comment on it and come up with a work plan for the future, and we could decide over what time period, et cetera, that would come up. Okay, and
Just a question. I'm not an expert on all this, but I just want to make sure that if we have some kind of an interactive Google Doc that's open only to BPAC, do we run into a Brown Act issue?
a good question, Barry.
We will ask that question, Barry. I think it's an excellent question. I personally, I'm not an attorney, but I can tell you, you know, the Brown Act is not meant to not let us work on drafts. I mean, we're not making any decisions.
Right, it's not a decision making.
So we're not, as long as we're not gathering to make decisions and we're excluding people from that decision. I mean, there's a task that we're working on, and we can definitely collaborate electronically to do that. But I will run it by the city attorney.
If I can interject,
Sure.
If there is an issue, I think ultimately we can get around it by just making a document public and linking it within the meeting or something. Because I mean, if it's public and only we can edit it, but everybody else can see it, I don't see any issue with that interfering with anything.
Okay, we'll look into that, Tyler. Thank you for the suggestion as well. But we'll look into that. I think we need to a little bit kind of put together the task. I am thinking maybe take the two, you know, out of each goal, take the 2020 and 2022 and expand the matrix to allow people to make comments, as including staff. I agree with you, Kate, that the plan, this plan is going to be congruent. You know, we're all going to be working on together towards the same goals that we all said in 2018 that we're going to try to achieve. So we need to relate some of these recommendations to the things that are being done. You know, you're going to find that your work on 3rd Street, you know, perfecting the bike path is exactly what this plan says. So it's a matter of maybe implementing and reporting. And then once we start filling into the blanks, we will see what's really been missing in terms of the BPAC focus on overall policy. And you know, I've seen a lot of Vision Zero plans. I'm not an advocate of it. I'm not against it. Believe me when I tell you, it looks very much like what you're seeing on your screen. You know, it is not much different. You know, it's a systematic approach to eliminate conflict and provide smooth mobility. That's what Vision Zero. And you know, we might reach for the moon in a Vision Zero. We can also be reasonable and you know, set up goals that are achievable and feel good as we move forward. But you know, I don't want to answer for Lauren, but I tell you that you know, I maybe give Lauren a chance to comment on the idea of putting the goals, the strategies, and 2020 and 2022 in a matrix and make it a Google document for people to put their thoughts. And let's just do a brain dump on, you know, what does that mean to you and how can we make it move forward? That would be the first task.
Okay.
And then there has to be an effort by a select group to decide what is the draft document that's going to be presented to BPAC next time. And then we can have discussion following the goals and the tasks in each goals.
Okay. I want to give a chance for Lauren, if you have anything to add, please do. And I want to give a chance for the public to comment before we close this item and then close the meeting, because we're running a little bit late.
Nothing to add.
Okay. So let's open it up to public comment. Does anybody from the public have a comment on this agenda item?
I could read Lori in the chat had a
Okay.
comment that she wanted to be addressed about pedestrian safety. She said she had mentioned on earlier. I went back and looked. I saw she had 2 comments, one asking why there were tree limbs covering signs in San Rafael. I think Lauren did a good job presenting about that in her presentation, and that there is a website you could go to report them. We have lots of streets to look at and it needs to be reported on. The other comment that she had was that she does not trust the countdown on traffic lights for pedestrians. That was her comment.
Okay. Okay. All right. With no other comments, I'm going to close that agenda item. Are there agenda item 7? Are there any other future agenda items that anybody would like to have on the agenda? And first BPAC, I don't see any hands. Go ahead.
Yeah,
Barry.
I'm wondering if I'm wondering what the status is of the bike share program, and what the time frame looks like, and is that something where I don't know if decisions have been made or it's being considered where where they would be placed, or just various things about the program. I think it'd be interesting to hear where that's at.
I think Tam had a survey out, but Lauren or Rafat, do you know? Do you have any
Yeah.
information? Okay.
Yeah, so TAM had a survey out. The way that they determine locations is data driven as well as community driven. So that's why that survey was out. We took this item to City Council back in April for City Council to accept this agreement with TAM and SCTA and Bike Share to have the program. And so that's all legit. And the bike share company is working on, okay, where are we going to put these stations? I think they're hoping for a deployment of this fall or next spring. It keeps getting pushed out.
Great. Okay, anybody else have any other, any possible future agenda items? Okay, I'm going to go to the public. Lori, did you, you have your hand raised, Lori.
Okay, got it. Yes, I did not say that I don't trust the traffic lights. Please make sure that that gets removed. If you read what I wrote, that is not what I said. If they're not consistent, then when they count down in San Francisco, when they count down and it gets to 0, the light turns yellow and then it turns red. It's consistent. In San Rafael, it's not consistent, and people don't always trust those countdown timers to go yellow when it goes to 0. So people run across the street because sometimes that works and sometimes it doesn't.
Okay.
That was my point.
Okay.
And
Lori, I'm sorry that I misrepresented your comment. I think that was what I was trying to say.
that is not what you said. You
well.
said that I don't trust them, and I don't, that is not the truth. I did not say that.
Okay.
Thank you.
I think did we lose Kate?
Yeah, I think we lost Kate.
Okay. Well,
Clear sign to end.
yeah, I'm going to suggest that we end the meeting. And I'm sorry we lost Kate, but we're going to lose her. I'm glad we lost her at the very end and not early on. So I think it was
Do
a
you
great.
adjourn it, Kevin?
Yes, I will adjourn the meeting. Thanks everyone for participating.
At 8:10. Thank you.
Thank you.